Good evening. Happy Labor Day, Dan Delmar and Robyn Flynn in for Aaron, who is back tomorrow. It is now time for James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. Happy Labor Day, sir.
And to you and to all those who celebrate. And while I have you guys on the line, can you recall a Labor Day in recent memory where you haven't worked? Because I know I can't.
I think I missed one or two over the past 15 years.
Yeah.
But I really like working Labor Day because I like to talk about labor. It's one of the issues that we don't talk about enough. Are you guys unionized, by the way, at your shop there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good.
It's been Montreal Newspaper Guild. We're not as many as we used to be, but we still have our union. And it's kind of funny because a lot of the entire union movement is there was a while there where you either were for it or against it, but now I'm finding it intriguing. If we look at what's going on right now between the provincial government and the FIC, and indeed between the federal government and the rail workers, it's almost as if it's perceived as kind of an alien contraption that is getting in the way of political agendas and so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people forget that unions are what make things go. I'm very sorry, and I heard you talking about productivity, and I know there's the cliche about the city of Montreal workers. There's 5 of them standing around a hole, and 4 of them are supervising. But the fact is, unions are in a lot of places where you wouldn't expect them and where they're needed, and certainly in terms of grocery stores and so on and so forth, where you do need some kind of oversight in how your workplace is managed, and issues with safety and issues of fair pay. So yeah, it's still around. I don't think it's going to be going anyplace soon. Which is just as well, because I think apart from the union movement, there's a lot that's going to happen over the next 2 months that are going to shake a lot of things to their foundations. And I'm not just trying to, mimic Christian Dubé when I say that. I think we're really in a situation where up until now, if you've covered politics, if you've followed politics, you'd figure, okay, well, there's this thing coming down the pipe, there's this election, or there's a referendum, and that could be a big deal. Right now, we're going to be faced with a barrage of various events which will have a fundamental effect, not just on sort of the complexion of Canadian politics, certainly on that of U.S. politics, and certainly on where we, as Canadians, as taxpayers, are going to be, say, in 6 months' time. I've never seen so many things stacked up at once. Beginning, of course, 2 weeks from today, there's going to be a very, very interesting and / crucial by-election in the Montreal riding of LaSalle Mount Verdun. And if the Liberals lose this over and above their loss last June in Toronto St. Paul's, you are going to see some kind of reaction, whether it's Justin Trudeau maintaining he will never leave, and perhaps the party reacting to that decision, or perhaps acknowledging it's time for a change in leadership, which of course will have another domino effect on next year's federal election. But all the while that's going on, of course, come November, we are going to be paying a lot more attention to U.S. politics than we ever have, certainly more than we've paid to Canadian politics, because this is a huge election. And despite the fact that I think a lot of people are turning around and saying, well, look at Kamala Harris, she's got all kinds of momentum. They're just going to pound Trump into the ground. I'm not entirely sure about that. And I think for every American who stands up and, looks at what Trump has been doing or saying, says, no, this isn't who we are, I think there's at least one other who's keeping his or her mouth shut, thinking this is exactly who we are. So, yeah, I don't think, this thing is a done deal. Far from it. And I think what happens in that first week of November in the U.S. is going to have profound effects on how we live our lives in Canada.
So let's look into our crystal ball, Jim, and imagine a Trump presidency versus a Kamala presidency. What would that look like for Canadians?
Well, for Canadians, certainly. You know what? Here's the funny thing. In terms of trade, I don't think Trump was not that hard an adversary for Chrystia Freeland when she was negotiating free trade, our rethought free trade deal with the U.S. Democrats, no matter how nice we may think they are, have traditionally been far more protectionist and far more hard-nosed, especially in their dealings with this country when it comes to trade issues. So I'm not entirely sure that, a Harris, whereas a Harris administration would be perhaps good news for the overall future of the world. It may not be absolutely great for trade relations or economic relations with Canada. But the other thing, Robyn, I got to tell you, I don't know if I mentioned it when the last time I was talking to you guys. For me, it's a fundamental question, and it's not being addressed. I mean, Trump is ranting and raving the way he always does. I think the fundamental question here for a lot of people in the U.S. is, are you ready to have a woman of color to be the president of your republic? And I don't think that's a question a lot of Americans, no matter what their political affiliation is are ready to answer.
I think they're ready, personally. I mean, I at least hope they are. But in terms of what's better for Canada, I wonder what you think, James. Is it going to be a chaotic Trump presidency? Just in terms of the bottom line, like what would be better for our pocketbook? Some kind of Trump chaos or Kamala Harris maybe upping the protectionism up a little bit? I would probably still think Kamala Harris is generally safer for Canada, I hope.
Well, perhaps more predictable, perhaps more rational. But I also suspect that, the U.S. does have its agenda. It does have its bottom line. Right now we're seeing our government mimic the move of the Biden administration when it comes to slapping 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Just remember, I don't know if you guys have reminded our listeners, the Chinese won't be paying the tariff costs. It'll be the consumers who'll be paying the tariff costs. And the idea is to discourage the purchase of those vehicles, but who knows what fallout that's going to have. But yes, this is it's always a minefield for Canada when it comes to economic relations with the United States. That said, and I think even when we look back at the years when Trump was president, I believe between 35 and 40 states of the continental United States, their number one trading partner is Canada. So I don't think they want to start blowing things up on a major scale. And I don't think Trump pays that much attention, quite frankly, to international trade for him to turn around and start throwing spanners in the works, especially if there's money involved for the establishment, for the billionaires that he basically works for. So I think it's even money, guys. I think we should be wary whether it's a Trump presidency or a Harris presidency, and certainly we have to be very concerned about. And you guys have done a great job sort of describing it over the past hour. The new reality for the new economic reality for Canadians. That there are a lot of things that we took for granted. That indeed, you work hard, you get ahead, and so on and so forth, and you get all the things that you get, and you have a family and do ABC. A lot of that stuff got blown out the airlock, and it wasn't just COVID that did it. I think there's a lot of bottom line, the pressure for the bottom line for a lot of corporations now trumps everything else, no pun intended, and a lot of people. Let me put it this way. I mean, I hate to say it. I'm sure as hell glad I'm not 20 in 2024.
Yeah, tough time to be a Gen Z kid right now. I always find it interesting, Jim, how governments are able to make promises until they get into office. And then once they take a look at the books and they actually have to negotiate with people, they get, this is a lot more complicated than we thought. 5 years ago, the CAQ promised we're going to end mandatory overtime for nurses. Yep. Nope, that didn't happen. Now the FIC nurses are launching an overtime strike.
Well, Danielle McCann,
forced overtime.
Remember her? She was the health minister, and it was in February of 2019. I think they just got elected.
Yeah.
And she was sure to the echo. She addressed the Quebec Federation of Nurses and said, you know what, we are going to eliminate it. You are not going to be working mandatory overtime anymore. And, of course, it's built into the system. And now they are trying even more to, in the negotiation with the FIC, to impose controls on where nurses can work, where they can be assigned to work, and what managers can do to assign them. It's going to be a really tough negotiation. I've mentioned on the show earlier that the FIC is shaping up to be one of the toughest trade unions I've ever seen in Quebec, and they don't mess around. And their overtime strike is scheduled to begin in the middle of this month. It is the last thing on earth that Francois Legault needs, but he's getting it in spades, and he deserves it. But yeah, it's always like that. You hear all these things are going to change. I mean, my God, remember back in 2018, the CAQ was supposed to have been the breath of fresh air. We're going to get rid of that, that feud between Federalists and Separatists. And I remember our dear friend Jean-Pierre used to say, les Québécois detest they don't want chicane, okay? And all Francois Legault has done in the past 6 years is create the chicane in Quebec. And maybe his numbers are a reflection of that. But it's going to be a very interesting fall for healthcare, a very interesting fall as well for this government, because on the one hand, they can't afford to blink on this fundamental change that as far as I'm concerned, is their legacy legislation, is to rethink the entire healthcare system. But on the other hand, you'd rather, jump headfirst into a basket full of cobras than take on Quebec's nurses, because they automatically have like 400% public sympathy built in. And it's very, very tough to overcome that, no matter how many times you hold press conferences, hold up flow charts, or just basically say, don't hold the patient hostage. I think a lot of people are really tired. They're exhausted with Francois Legault's confrontations. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you may see a big, fat, giant blink on the CAQ when it comes to healthcare, when it comes certainly with labor relations with nurses.
James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. You're back tomorrow at 5, James?
Maybe I'm at 4. They're not sure. Just listen the whole day. I'll be on at some point.
All right, 4 or 5. We'll decide tomorrow. James Mennie, thanks so much.